Seeds of Ambition. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air of West Side Brews, a cozy cafe nestled between towering financial buildings in downtown Seattle. Olivia Reed had mastered the art of becoming nearly invisible while serving. The parade of executives, analysts, and entrepreneurs who streamed through each morning. "One Americano, extra shot," she said, sliding the cup across the counter with a practiced smile. At 32, Olivia had the kind of unremarkable presence that powerful people tended to look through rather than at, exactly as she preferred. It behind her wire-rimmed glasses and simple ponytail lay a mind that had once graduated top of her class from MIT with dual degrees in computer science and economics. Life had other plans when her sister's car accident left her nephew Thomas without a caretaker. Olivia stepped away from a promising career to raise him, finding work with flexible hours at Westside. "The usual, please," came the clipped voice of Dominic Voss, CEO of Voss Point Technologies, a rising star in the data analytics sector. Without looking up from his phone, he slid his platinum card across the counter. Tall, with precisely cut dark hair and perpetually narrowed eyes, he exuded the particular brand of arrogance that came from rapid success. "Coming right up, Mr. Voss," Olivia replied, already preparing his macchiato exactly as he liked it, not that he'd ever noticed the consistency. While steaming milk, she overheard a conversation at a nearby table between two women discussing investment strategies for a new predictive algorithm platform. "The problem with current models is they can't adequately process unstructured data without massive computing resources," one woman said. Olivia couldn't help herself. "Actually, there's a distributed processing approach using modified Hadoop clusters that could solve that bottleneck. MIT published a paper on it last spring." The women turned, surprised. The older one adjusted her glasses. "That's interesting. Are you familiar with the field?" "I worked on similar systems at—" A sharp laugh cut through their conversation. Dominic had been standing nearby, waiting for his drink. "Let me guess," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You read about it in some pop science magazine? Or maybe a TED Talk?" He chuckled, making eye contact with the businesswomen as if sharing an inside joke. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was actually referring to Zhang and Marani's distributed algorithm for heterogeneous data processing." Dominic's smile turned patronizing. "Look, sweetheart, stick to the lattes. The adults are talking about things you wouldn't understand." He took his drink from the counter. "When you've built a company valued at 8 figures, then maybe you can join the conversation." The businesswomen looked uncomfortable as Dominic walked away. One offered Olivia an apologetic smile before they gathered their things and left. That evening, Olivia sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, Thomas asleep in the next room. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a document titled Neural Harvest Platform, initial architecture glowing on the screen. It had been her passion project before life intervened, a system that could analyze market patterns with unprecedented accuracy using a fraction of the computing power of current solutions. Her phone buzzed with a text from her former professor, Dr. Nakamura. "How long are you going to let that brilliant mind of yours go to waste, Olivia? The fellowship position is still open if you want it." Olivia stared at her nephew's school picture on the refrigerator, then at the half-finished code on her screen. Something in her shifted, a seed of determination taking root. "Not a fellowship," she typed back. "But I might need your advice on something else." She opened a new document and began to type Neural Harvest, Revised Business Plan. Dominic Voss had no idea, but he'd just awakened something that had been dormant in Olivia for far too long. She wasn't just going to prove him wrong, she was going to change the entire landscape he thought he dominated. The blueprint, the fluorescent lights of Dr. Nakamura's office, cast a blue-white glow over the whiteboards filled with algorithms and flowcharts. Olivia paced back and forth, explaining her vision while her former professor nodded thoughtfully, his salt and pepper beard newly trimmed since she'd last seen him. So you're saying Neural Harvest could predict market fluctuations with 87% accuracy using 1/10 the processing power of current systems? Dr. Nakamura raised an eyebrow. That's conservative, Olivia replied, tapping her finger against a complex equation. The distributed processing approach I've developed can analyze unstructured data from social media, news cycles, and consumer behavior simultaneously. The key is the neural networks operating in parallel streams rather than sequential processing. Dr. Nakamura removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. You always were my most promising student, Olivia. This could revolutionize fintech, but you'll need capital, a team, infrastructure. That's why I'm here. Olivia sat down, her resolve evident in her steady gaze. I need your connections. I've spent 3 years refining this algorithm while making lattes for people who wouldn't look twice at me. The professor leaned back in his chair. What about Thomas? Your sister would be proud of how you've cared for him. Olivia's expression softened. He's 11 now, more independent. I've arranged a part-time schedule at the cafe and found an after-school program he loves. This is for both of us. By the end of the evening, Dr. Nakamura had made 3 calls to former students, now working in venture capital. Olivia left with a list of names and a meeting scheduled for the following week with Patricia Winters, an angel investor known for backing women in tech. The next morning at West Side Brews, Olivia moved through her routine with renewed purpose. Every dismissive glance from the business crowd, every smartphone-absorbed customer who couldn't be bothered to say thank you, all fuel for the fire building within her. Dominic Voss arrived at his usual time, today accompanied by a younger man, who seemed to be receiving an endless stream of instructions. The board expects the Archer acquisition to close by quarter's end, Dominic was saying. Their predictive analytics module is crude but functional. We'll gut their team but keep the client base. Olivia placed his macchiato on the counter without comment, but Dominic paused mid-sentence, noticing her for perhaps the first time. You're still here, he said, seeming genuinely surprised. I thought you'd have moved on to whatever the next step is from barista. He smirked at his own joke. Just living the dream, Olivia replied with a pleasant smile that didn't reach her eyes. Enjoy your macchiato. Later that night, after helping Thomas with his science project and tucking him in, Olivia worked until 3 a.m. refining her business plan. Patricia Winters had a reputation for tearing apart pitches with brutal efficiency. Olivia would have one chance to impress her. The meeting with Patricia took place in a minimalist office overlooking Elliott Bay. The investor, a former hedge fund manager with calculating eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened without interruption as Olivia walked through her presentation. Your algorithm is impressive, Patricia said when Olivia finished. But algorithms aren't businesses. What's your monetization strategy? Olivia pulled up a new slide. Tiered subscription model. Enterprise clients pay premium rates for full access to predictive tools. Small businesses get a scaled-down version at accessible price points. The key difference between Neural Harvest and competitors like VossPoint is that we don't need massive server farms. Our distributed approach means we can operate at a fraction of their overhead while delivering superior results. Patricia's eyebrow raised slightly at the mention of VossPoint. You've studied the competition. I've served coffee to the competition, Olivia replied. Dominic Voss comes into my cafe every morning. His company has overextended itself acquiring startups with bloated infrastructures. They're processing heavy and innovation light. A hint of a smile played at Patricia's lips. You have insider information. I have open ears and people who don't notice me, Olivia corrected. Different thing entirely. By the end of the meeting, Patricia had agreed to seed funding of $1.2 million. 2 weeks later, Olivia gave notice at West Side Brews. She kept one shift on Saturday mornings, a reminder of where she'd started and the invisibility that had become her unexpected advantage. In a small office space near Pioneer Square, Neural Harvest began to take shape. Olivia recruited Jawan Park, a brilliant programmer she'd known from MIT, and Elena Vasiliev, a data scientist whose research Olivia had followed for years. Both had grown disillusioned with corporate tech culture and were hungry for something authentic. "We're the underdogs," Olivia told her small team as they set up their workstations. "But we're going to change how financial data is processed and analyzed, and eventually, we're going to give some very arrogant people a lesson in humility." Thomas visited the office after school, doing homework at an empty desk, occasionally offering suggestions for the user interface that proved surprisingly insightful. Olivia realized her nephew had inherited the family's analytical mind. 6 months of intense development later, Neural Harvest launched its beta platform to a carefully selected group of small investment firms. The results exceeded even Olivia's expectations. Their system predicted market movements with remarkable accuracy, identified emerging patterns invisible to conventional analytics, and did it all with minimal server requirements. Patricia Winters doubled down on her investment after seeing the beta results. "You've built something extraordinary here, Olivia, but success attracts attention. Are you prepared for what comes next?" Olivia thought of Dominic's dismissive laugh, of all the doors that had closed in her face when she tried to balance raising. "Thomas with her career ambitions. I'm counting on it," she replied. Rising tide, the headquarters of Neural Harvest had moved from the cramped office in Pioneer Square to an entire floor in a downtown high-rise. 18 months after their initial launch, Olivia stood before her team of 35 employees, the energy in the room electric with anticipation. "Sunstream Capital has just signed on as our 15th major client," she announced, triggering a round of applause. "Their CIO specifically mentioned that after comparing our predictive accuracy to VosPoint's system, the decision wasn't even close." Jawan Park, now Olivia's CTO, grinned from his seat. "Should we send Dominic Voss a thank you note? After all, his bloated acquisition strategy is sending clients our way." Laughter rippled through the room. Neural Harvest had developed a corporate culture that celebrated their underdog status, even as they rapidly outgrew the label. Elena Vasiliev, their lead data scientist, raised her hand. "The Meridian Group has requested a meeting. They're looking to divest from several tech holdings and want our analysis on optimal timing." Olivia's pulse quickened. The Meridian Group was one of the largest investment firms on the West Coast, and also one of VosPoint's earliest backers. "Schedule it for tomorrow. I'll handle this one personally." Later that afternoon, Olivia sat in her office overlooking the Seattle skyline, reviewing financial reports with Bernard Hughes, their recently hired CFO. A former Wall Street executive who'd grown tired of New York's cutthroat environment, Bernard brought the financial expertise that complemented Olivia's technical vision. "VosPoint's stock dropped another 3 points today," Bernard noted, sliding a tablet across the desk. "Their last 2 acquisitions haven't integrated well. Rumors are circulating about technical incompatibilities between their systems." Olivia studied the numbers. "What about Archer Analytics? That was supposed to be their crown jewel acquisition." Bernard's expression was grim. "Sources say their integration has been a disaster. The Archer platform can't scale to handle VosPoint's client load without massive server investments. They're hemorrhaging both money and talent." A plan began forming in Olivia's mind. "What if we made a move on Clearview Systems? They provide the back-end architecture for several VosPoint subsidiaries." Bernard's eyes widened. "That would be aggressive. Clearview is privately held, but they've been looking for capital. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "Strategic acquisition," Olivia confirmed. "We don't need their technology. We need their client relationships and their contracts with VosPoint. If we control Clearview, we control a critical component of Dominic's infrastructure." The Meridian Group meeting the next day exceeded all expectations. Impressed by Neural Harvest's performance metrics and lean operation model, they not only signed on as clients, but expressed interest in participating in the company's next funding round. "We've been watching your growth with interest," said Lenora. Blackwell, Meridian's managing partner, as they concluded their meeting. Particularly how you've managed to achieve with 35 people what Voss Point struggles to do with 300. Olivia maintained her professional demeanor, but inside, satisfaction bloomed. Different approaches to the same problem. We believe in elegance over brute force. Lenora's eyes twinkled with something like conspiracy. Between us, Dominic Voss has become increasingly difficult to work with. His recent acquisition spree has stretched their resources thin, and their core technology hasn't evolved in 18 months. That's illuminating, Olivia replied carefully. Just something to consider as you continue your expansion, Lenora said with a knowing smile. The acquisition of Clearview Systems took 3 months of careful negotiation. When the deal closed, Neural Harvest now controlled a key piece of Voss Point's operational infrastructure. The tech media took notice, with TechWire running a profile on the stealth competitor reshaping financial analytics. The article made no mention of Olivia's past as a barista, focusing instead on her academic credentials and innovative approach to predictive algorithms. She kept the clipping in her desk drawer, not out of vanity, but as a milestone marker. Thomas, now 13 and increasingly aware of his aunt's growing success, pointed to her picture in the article. Does Mr. Voss know it's you? The coffee lady? Olivia ruffled his hair. Not yet, but he will. The next strategic move came 6 months later when Neural Harvest acquired DataStream Solutions, another key vendor in Voss Point's increasingly fragile ecosystem. With each acquisition, Olivia made sure to retain the most talented staff while implementing Neural Harvest's more efficient systems. One evening, as she worked late at the office, Olivia received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Winters arrived, unannounced, carrying a bottle of champagne. I thought we should celebrate, Patricia said, setting down 2 glasses. Meridian Group has reduced their position in Voss Point by 60% and increased their stake in Neural Harvest. The market is starting to notice the shift. As they sipped champagne overlooking the nighttime skyline, Patricia studied Olivia thoughtfully. This isn't just about building a successful company for you, is it? Olivia considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. Success is part of it. Creating something valuable that helps businesses make better decisions. That matters. To me. But yes, there's more. Dominic Voss, Patricia stated simply. He represents something larger, Olivia replied. A system that dismisses people based on appearances, that values arrogance over insight. That can't recognize talent unless it comes in the expected package. She turned to face her investor and now friend. I'm not just building a company. I'm changing the rules of the game. Patricia raised her glass. Then here's to changing the rules and to what comes next. What came next would shake the foundations of the financial technology world. Calculated moves, the Westin Hotel ballroom buzzed with the energy of the Northwest Technology Summit, the premier gathering of tech executives and investors in the region. Olivia, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that projected quiet confidence, moved through the crowd with purpose, nodding to familiar faces while Joanne and Elena engaged potential clients at the Neural Harvest booth. 3 years had transformed her company from an upstart with a promising algorithm to a formidable player in financial technology. With a valuation approaching $800 million and a client roster that included 8 of the top 20 investment firms in the country, Neural Harvest had emerged from the shadows into the spotlight. Ms. Reed, called out Warren Fletcher, CEO of Transcend Financial. Your predictive models saved us during the microcurrency collapse last quarter. Absolutely brilliant work. Olivia accepted the praise with a modest nod. Our system was designed to detect exactly those kinds of anomalies. I'm glad it served you well. As she moved away from the conversation, Olivia caught sight of Dominic Voss across the room, surrounded by a smaller entourage than in previous years. His company's recent struggles had been well documented in the financial press. Failed integrations, client departures, and a plummeting stock price had tarnished the once rising star. Dominic hadn't recognized her yet. In his world, baristas didn't transform into tech executives, and his memory didn't retain those he considered beneath his notice. This selective blindness had become Olivia's greatest advantage. Bernard Hughes approached, tablet in hand, his expression serious. Meridian Group has made their decision. They're prepared to divest their remaining Voss Point holdings and back our play. Olivia's heart raced. And BlackRock Ventures? They're in. The term sheet arrived an hour ago. Bernard lowered his voice. With their backing, we have the capital to make the offer. The question is timing. Olivia's gaze returned to Dominic, who was now gesturing emphatically to a group of uncomfortable-looking investors. Tomorrow, after his keynote address, everything is in position? Bernard nodded. Legal has prepared the documents. Our board has unanimously approved. We're ready. Later that evening, at the summit's reception dinner, Olivia found herself seated at a table adjacent to Dominic's. She observed him closely, the tight smile that didn't reach his eyes, the slightly frayed cuff of his otherwise impeccable suit, the way he checked his phone with increasing frequency as the night progressed. Voss Point Technologies was in trouble, and its founder knew it. The company had overextended itself, acquiring startups without proper integration planning, accumulating technical debt that now threatened to collapse the entire structure. What had seemed like visionary expansion had revealed itself as hubris. Olivia excused herself from her table and made her way to the bar, deliberately passing close to Dominic's seat. For a moment, their eyes met. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, recognition fighting with disbelief. "Do I know you?" he asked, halting her passage with the question. Olivia smiled pleasantly. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced." Olivia Reed, Neural Harvest. Dominic's expression cleared, replaced by professional interest. "Ah, yes. You've been making waves, impressive growth trajectory." "Thank you. We focus on efficiency and accuracy rather than size for its own sake." Something in her tone made him study her more carefully. "There's something familiar about you." "I have that kind of face," Olivia replied. "I'm looking forward to your keynote tomorrow. I understand you'll be discussing Voss Point's strategic direction?" Dominic's smile tightened. "Among other things, the market has misunderstood some of our recent challenges." "Markets often miss the underlying patterns," Olivia agreed. "That's precisely the problem Neural Harvest was created to solve." She returned to her table, feeling his gaze follow her. The seed had been planted, a nagging sense of recognition that would bloom into full understanding within 24 hours. The next morning, Olivia met with her executive team in their hotel suite, reviewing the final details of what they had come to call Operation Watershed. "Voss Point's board meeting is scheduled for Thursday," Elena reported. "Sources say they're planning to discuss replacing Dominic as CEO. Their stock has fallen 40% in 6 months. "They won't get the chance," Olivia replied. "By Thursday, we'll control enough of Voss Point to dictate terms." Through careful maneuvering and strategic acquisitions, Neural Harvest had positioned itself to launch a takeover of Voss Point Technologies, not through a traditional hostile acquisition, but through a complex web of dependencies they'd quietly established. By acquiring key vendors and securing backing from Voss Point's major investors, they had engineered a scenario where the larger company had become vulnerable to their smaller but more nimble competitor. Dominic's keynote address that afternoon was a study in corporate doublespeak, challenges reframed as opportunities, failures as strategic pauses, declining revenues as investment in future growth. The audience received it with polite but skeptical applause. As attendees filed out of the ballroom, Olivia received a text from Bernard. "Meridian just filed their SEC disclosure. It's public now." Minutes later, phones began buzzing throughout the convention center as the news spread. Meridian Group had divested entirely from Voss Point and significantly increased its position in Neural Harvest. The implications were clear to industry insiders. A major vote of no confidence in Dominic's leadership and a dramatic endorsement of the upstart competitor. Olivia watched from across the lobby as Dominic was surrounded by reporters asking for comment. His face had gone pale, his responses clipped and defensive. Thomas called as Olivia was returning to her hotel room. Now 15 and increasingly independent, he had remained her emotional anchor throughout Neural Harvest's meteoric rise. Aunt. Liv, it's all over the financial news sites. They're saying Neural Harvest is positioning for a takeover of Voss Point. Is it true? Olivia smiled at her nephew's excitement. It's complicated, but yes. Tomorrow will be illuminating. He still doesn't know who you are, does he? The coffee guy? Not yet, Olivia replied. But by this time tomorrow he will. That night, she barely slept, reviewing the journey that had brought her to this moment. From MIT graduate to reluctant barista to tech entrepreneur on the verge of an industry-shaking move. She thought of her sister, who would have been proud, and of Thomas, for whom she had built not just a company, but a legacy. Morning brought clarity and purpose. The final phase of Operation Watershed was about to begin. The Boardroom The Future of Finance panel was the summit's headline event, featuring industry leaders discussing emerging trends in financial technology. Originally scheduled to include 4 panelists, a last-minute addition had raised eyebrows. Among attendees, Olivia Reed of Neural Harvest would be joining Dominic Voss and other established executives on stage. The grand ballroom was filled to capacity, an atmosphere of anticipation hanging in the air. Market analysts and tech reporters lined the back wall, drawn by rumors of a major announcement. Olivia sat calmly at the end of the panel table, reviewing her notes while the other participants engaged in pre-panel small talk. Dominic entered last, his customary confidence noticeably diminished. The news of Meridian Group's divestment had sent Voss Point's stock into free fall, and emergency meetings with his board had occupied him until minutes before the panel. He took his seat without acknowledging Olivia, though she noted the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hand as he arranged his materials. The moderator, financial journalist Rebecca Torres, opened with a pointed question. The financial analytics sector has seen dramatic shifts in recent months, with established players losing ground to newer, more agile competitors. Mr. Voss, how is Voss Point adapting to these changing dynamics? Dominic leaned forward, summoning a performance of assured leadership. Every industry experiences cycles of disruption and consolidation. Voss Point has weathered transitions before. Our substantial market share and enterprise client base provide stability while we refine our technological approach. Rebecca turned to Olivia. Ms. Reed, Neural Harvest has achieved remarkable growth in a relatively short time. What differentiates your approach from established players like Voss Point? Olivia's response was measured, technical, but accessible. We built Neural Harvest on the principle that predictive analytics shouldn't require massive computing resources to deliver accuracy. Our distributed processing architecture allows us to achieve more with less. Less energy consumption, less infrastructure overhead, less complexity for end users. The discussion continued, with Dominic growing increasingly defensive as Olivia articulated a vision of financial technology that made his company's approach seem outdated and inefficient. The other panelists, sensing the shifting power dynamic, began directing their comments more toward Olivia than Dominic. 40 minutes into the panel, Rebecca addressed what many in the audience had come to hear. Ms. Reed, there are reports that Neural Harvest has been strategically acquiring companies in Voss Point's supply chain. Can you comment on your company's apparent positioning for a larger move? The room fell silent. Dominic turned to stare at Olivia, the first direct acknowledgement of her presence since the panel began. Olivia smiled. Thank you for the question. Rebecca, it allows me to share some news. She paused, making eye contact with key figures in the audience. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Neural Harvest, in partnership with BlackRock Ventures and Meridian Group, has acquired controlling interest in VossPoint Technologies through a combination of direct stock purchases and strategic proxies. And murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed. Dominic's face drained of color. "This isn't possible," he said, his microphone capturing the words. "I assure you it is," Olivia replied calmly. "The SEC filings were completed this morning. VossPoint's board has already been notified and has approved the transition plan." Rebecca struggled to maintain moderator composure. "To be clear, Ms. Reed, you're announcing a takeover of VossPoint Technologies?" "I prefer to call it a strategic integration," Olivia corrected. "VossPoint has valuable client relationships and market presence. What it lacks is technological efficiency and forward-thinking leadership. Neural Harvest will provide both." The moderator turned to Dominic. "Mr. Voss, your response?" Dominic's shock had given way to anger. "This is preposterous. I founded VossPoint. I built it from nothing. You can't just... Who are you? Where did you even come from?" The question hung in the air, creating the moment Olivia had anticipated for 3 years. She leaned slightly toward her microphone. "That's an interesting question, Mr. Voss. We've actually met before. For nearly a year, I served you a macchiato every morning at Westside Brews while building Neural Harvest's prototype. You might remember telling me to stick to making coffee when I joined a conversation about predictive algorithms." Recognition dawned on Dominic's face, followed by disbelief. "The barista? That's impossible. Before I was a barista, I was an MIT graduate with dual degrees in computer science and economics," Olivia continued, her voice steady. "I stepped away from my career to raise my nephew after my sister's accident. Making coffee was how I paid the bills while developing the algorithm that would eventually outperform your entire tech stack." The audience was transfixed. Rebecca, recognizing historic television when she saw it, remained silent. "You dismissed me because of where I worked, not because of what I knew," Olivia said. "That mistake has cost you your company." In the stunned silence that followed, Olivia addressed the wider audience. "Neural Harvest was built on the principle that brilliant ideas can come from anywhere and anyone. Our integrated company will maintain that philosophy, evaluating talent based on capabilities rather than credentials or conformity." Dominic pushed back his chair abruptly. "This isn't over. My lawyers will—" "Your lawyers have already reviewed the transaction," Olivia interrupted gently, "as have your board members, 7 of whom have accepted positions on our expanded board. The paperwork awaits your signature, but it doesn't require it." As the implications of her words sank in, Dominic's expression shifted from anger to defeat. Without another word, he removed his microphone and walked off the stage. Rebecca turned to Olivia. "Ms. Reed, what happens now?" "Now we build something better," Olivia replied. "VossPoint's employees needn't fear for their positions. Talent will be retained and nurtured. What changes is the culture and the technology approach. Both companies emerge stronger through integration." The remainder of the panel became, effectively, Olivia's platform for outlining her vision for the combined entity. Financial analysts in the audience were already updating their projections, recognizing that the merger created a formidable new power in the fintech landscape. Afterward, as Olivia fielded questions from reporters in the hallway, she spotted a familiar face at the periphery of the crowd, Dr. Nakamura, beaming with pride. She excused herself briefly to embrace her mentor. "You've come quite a long way from our whiteboard sessions," he said, his eyes glistening slightly. "I had an excellent teacher," she replied. That evening, Olivia hosted a dinner for Neural Harvest's original team members, Jiwan, Elena, and the handful of others who had believed in her vision when it existed only on paper. Thomas joined them, proudly wearing a company t-shirt and bombarding everyone with questions about the technical details of the acquisition. As their celebration continued, Olivia stepped onto the restaurant's balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The Seattle skyline glittered before her, including the building where Westside Brews still served its morning clientele. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Saw everything on live stream. Perfection. Stock already up 22% in after hours. Trading. Olivia smiled, thinking not of the stock price, but of the journey. From invisible to invaluable, from dismissed to decisive. She had not only built a successful company, but had changed the rules of a game that had been stacked against people like her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Integrating two companies, managing market expectations, establishing a unified culture. But tonight, looking out at the city where she had once been invisible, Olivia Reed allowed herself to savor the simple, profound satisfaction of being truly seen.